of the strength and joy to be drawn from it should be present in our minds and should govern our estimate of what we read. Now, this is not a foreign idea. I have students that play video games and then they'll go back to the old classic video game. And when you ask them why, they say, there's just something about the classic. I don't know what it is. It's one of the great ones. And in many ways, this is really what's being suggested here. A few paragraphs later, he says it this way: all this is brilliantly and tellingly said, but we must plead for a distinction. Everything depends on the reality of a poet's classic character. If he's a dubious classic, let us sift him. If he's a false classic, let us explode him. But if he's a real classic, if his work belongs to the class of the very best, right? For this is the true and right meaning of the word classic, classical. Then the great thing for us is to feel and enjoy his work as deeply as ever we can, and to appreciate the wide difference between it and all the work which is not the same high character. We made the argument that when we read our Shakespeare, our Homer, our Milton, our Dante, certainly our T.S. Eliot as well, but notice all of those are considered classics who are, what? White men. So we've got to as well include in there, obviously, our Maya Angelou, as well as our Virginia Woolf and Tilly Olson, I mentioned in her famous essay on Silences, where she makes the argument in Silences, which is why this is one of the sacred texts of our room, 303. She makes the argument, it wasn't that women weren't writing. I mean, In Search of Our Mother's Gardens, Alice Walker's classic essay proved this. It's not that we didn't have artists who were women, it's that they were not often allowed to be heard. Their voices were not allowed to be heard because, of course, men ran most of the political establishments of publishing and the like, right? He continues, this is what is salutary, this is what is formative, this is the great benefit to be got from the study of poetry. Everything which interferes with it, which hinders it, is injurious. True, we must read our classic with open eyes, and not with eyes blinded with superstition. We must perceive when his work comes short, when it drops out of the class at the very best, and we must rate it, in such cases, at its proper value. This is what we mean when we say we're the stories we accept, and of course the stories that we reject. A few paragraphs later, he says this. He says, Chaucer's power, is talking about Chaucer now, Chaucer's power of fascination, however, is enduring. His poetical importance does not need the assistance of the historic estimate. It is real. He, Chaucer, is a genuine source of joy and strength, which is flowing still for us and will flow always. We would hope, of course, that this would be the case because Chaucer is so timely as we make the argument in our lectures about Chaucer. He will be read as time goes on, far more generally than he's read now. His language is a cause of difficulty for us. We know this to be true. But so also, and I think it's quite as great a degree, is the language of Burns. And then he gets into his discussion about Burns and Chaucer. A few lines later, he says it this way: a refinement of our numbers means something far more than this. A nation may have versifiers with smooth numbers and easy rhymes, and yet may have no real poetry at all. We will think of Emerson's call for the great American poet, and of course Whitman to step forward and to take that call. Chaucer, he says it, is the father of our splendid English poetry, and this in many ways is one of the reasons we call Chaucer the father of the English language. He is our, quote, well of English undefiled, because, end quote, because of the lovely charm of his diction, the lovely charm of his movement. He makes an epoch and founds a tradition. He continues, in Spenser, Shakespeare, Milton, Keats, we can follow the tradition of the liquid diction, the fluid movement of Chaucer. At one time, it is his liquid diction of which, in these poets, we feel the virtue, and at another time, it's his fluid movement, and the virtue is irresistible. Well, I think, depending on how we read Chaucer, we maybe would agree that there's something compelling there. This is how the essay finishes, and then I'll leave you guys. Again, as we've always done with these essays and these comments, I hope that this will lead you to actually go to the study of poetry. I mean, if you're going to consider yourself well-read, it makes sense that you would listen to somebody like Arnold. You don't have to agree with him, but you certainly have to respect what he's saying. This is how he ends his essay. At any rate, the end to which the method, the estimate, are designed to lead, and from leading to which, if they do lead to it, they get their whole value, the benefit of being able clearly to feel and deeply to enjoy the best, the truly classic in poetry, is an end. Let me say it once more at parting, of supreme importance. We're often told that an era is opening in which we are to see multitudes of a common sort of readers and masses of a common sort of literature, that such readers do not want and could not relish anything better than such literature, and that to provide it is becoming a vast and profitable industry. Even if good literature entirely lost currency with the world, it would still be abundantly worthwhile to continue to enjoy it by oneself. I love that line so much that let's read it again. Even if good literature entirely lost currency with the world, it would still be abundantly worthwhile to continue to enjoy it by oneself, but it never will lose currency with the world in spite of monetary appearances. It never will lose supremacy. Currency and supremacy are ensured to it not indeed by the world's deliberate and conscious choice, but by something far deeper, by the instinct of self-preservation in humanity. In other words, if we want to sustain ourselves, we have to read poetry. Well, there you go. I hope that you will enjoy this essay, and it'll lead you to read more of the great Arnold. Thank you.